Guys, today on the Fantasy Follow, we look back on what was week 13. Amon-Ra St. Brown getting hurt. So, what does that mean going forward for the Lions? How long is he going to be out? The return of Joe Burrow. And then we also had the Rams. What happened? Obviously the NFL full of surprises, but losing to the Panthers, certainly one of the surprises we did not see coming. With that, guys, welcome in to the Fantasy Fallout presented by One Week Season. Head to oneweekseason.com. Check out all that's going on over there. He is Mike Johnson. I'm Cheeseman, your host, and we welcome you in. Mike, how you doing, man?
Terrific. Had a nice little sweat. Took 7th in the flea flicker this week. 83,000 person tournament. So that was nice. And then 4 of the 6 lineups that finished ahead of me were were an OWS sub. Felix Char is his username. So he had 2 lineups tied for second. They were different lineups, but they had the exact same amount of points. And then took 5th and 6th as well. So nice little weekend for OWS. The Binks channel was popping. On to week 14.
What was your lineup that you said 7th? You finished 7th?
Yeah.
That's close.
So I finished 7th. It was Tyrod Taylor, Adonai Mitchell, and John Mechie with the Bijan Robinson bringback, and then had Devon Achane at the other running back spot with Juwan Johnson at tight end. Then it had Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers, and of course the Seattle defense.
Man, what a slate. I mean, dude, it was a slate. You certainly did not need as many points as usual to win, but dude, nice work, man. Weaving your way. And OWS fam, shout out to the people who were there at the top. All right, so let's jump in here to week 13. Starting out, you had the obviously we're looking at Thanksgiving slate games first. So starting with the Packers and Lions, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so obviously the big news there, you alluded to it in the intro, Amon-Ra St. Brown ankle injury on basically the first drive of the game, ruined the Thanksgiving slate for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
And fantasy managers as well. Sounds like it's not super severe. It's not like season ending, but they said he's probably going to miss a week or two for sure. They play again on Thursday this week. So maybe if they had that little extra time and played not till Sunday and would have had a 10-day break, might have had a chance. But they play the Cowboys in just a couple days. And it'll be the Jameson Williams show. Jameson had a big game in that spot. Cowboys defense has looked a little bit better, especially against the run in recent weeks. So Jameson Williams probably in a good spot there. But the Lions have lost Sam Laporta for the season. Amon-Ra St. Brown now goes down. So things are getting a little dicey for the Lions. We've seen them last year, their defense getting overwhelmed with injuries, but now it's hitting the offensive side as well. So will be an interesting stretch run for one of the NFC favorites. And then on the other side, the Packers, kind of a statement victory, winning. They swept the Lions now. They also beat the Vikings the week before. And now they have a big showdown. They play the Bears twice in the last 5 weeks. And that will pretty much determine what happens with that division. So that'll be an interesting one. But Jordan Love had a nice game there. Matthew Golden was out, so the receiving core was more concentrated. They weren't rotating guys. It was Dontavian Wicks with the big game, and Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson also contributed. But kind of sounds like Golden will probably be back. We also might get Jaden Reed back from injured reserve this week for the big showdown with the Bears. So despite how good they looked, I would be cautious with starting your Packers receivers this coming week, just because the usage is going to be a little more sporadic.
Yeah, great point there. It just kind of back to closer to full health for this receiving core, so just going to be spread much more thinly. The usage will be spread there for the Packers. Okay, so next one here, the Chiefs and the Cowboys. The Cowboys getting the somewhat decisive win in the second game there in the Thanksgiving slate.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of takeaways here. It was a very entertaining game, a fun game. George Pickens made some big plays, showed off his talent once again. CeeDee Lamb had the big game, bounce back. Some people were concerned, but should not have been. They're an elite offense. Both of those guys, I don't have to tell anyone to start them. And then that showdown we alluded to with the Lions coming up Thursday. And then, Javonte Williams and Jake Ferguson also, there's no injuries from the Cowboys side. They're a good offense. Not a lot to talk about. The Chiefs, kind of the same. Rashee Rice, he's a top 5 wide receiver week in and week out, and showed why. Travis Kelce, same thing. You're starting him every week. Really, it's just the backfield. Isaiah Pacheco returned. Kareem Hunt was still the lead back, but Pacheco and Brashard Smith were somewhat involved. And they signed Dameon Pierce early last week. So it was a little bit too quick of a turnaround to really expect him to be involved. But, it's a crowded situation there. So hard to really trust anyone. I guess Kareem Hunt, if you had to, just hope he falls into the end zone.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you're hoping for. So moving on to the nightcap there at Thanksgiving slate, the somewhat of a surprising result. We already talked about the return of Burrow. Didn't have a massive stat line, but the Ravens looked pretty much awful in a dream matchup.
Yeah, I think that's where sometimes we have to be, we've got to be fluid in our analysis of some of these teams, like the Bengals. Having Burrow back made a difference. But also, their defense, they lost a close game to the Patriots the week before, where the Patriots did not move the ball as well as some people thought they would. The Patriots looked awesome last night against the Giants. But the Bengals actually put up a bit of a fight against them, and the Ravens struggled a bit as well. A little bit misleading because the plays like the Isaiah Likely fumble was almost going to be a 50-yard touchdown, gets stripped as he's entering the end zone. Really didn't need to extend the ball, but he tried to and then got ripped. And then Zay Flowers caught like a 35-yard touchdown that they called offensive pass interference that it probably was, but I don't know that he really needed to push off. So, they held him to 14 points, but really that could have been 28. And if the game script's a little different, maybe Baltimore, there's probably a couple spots they went for something where they didn't have to. They probably got a little more away from their running game than they would have liked once they started to really fall behind. Derrick Henry, 10 runs for 60 yards, Keaton Mitchell, 2 runs for 19 yards. So you're looking at 80 yards on just 12 rushes. The volume just wasn't there. They kind of got away from it. It'll be interesting. They've got a big showdown for first place of the AFC North this week with the Steelers, who kind of have been suppressing game environments, very different than this Bengals situation. And the Bengals have a showdown with the Bills in what I'm sure everybody will be excited about, one of the premier matchups. Despite the Bengals' 4-8 record, they got their guys back.
Right. They got Burrow, so all bets are off. Man, that Likely touchdown that was not hurt me so bad. I had a prop bet actually on him as an anytime touchdown. So, man, that really, on a personal note, that hurt me deeply. Okay. The Bears and the Eagles, man, more like kind of surprising results. I guess the Bears, I think that was interesting, like both Monangai and Swift had over 100 yards rushing, and the Eagles, I don't know if it's news with them that they just continue to kind of just crash out, dude, as we near the end of the season here.
Yeah, well, we see this sometimes with teams, on the short week. It can kind of take a lot out of a defense to play, twice within a short span of time. So sometimes we will see, and, the Eagles, they also had a bad game the short week, that Thursday night game where they got trounced by the Giants and they had some guys down. So, they might just be a team that doesn't really recover well, or there might be something in their preparation or their routine that gets thrown off when they have those short weeks. Maybe something to think about. I don't know that we really have any more situations like that this year, but just trying to kind of explain that away. But really it's, the Bears running game, they ran the ball 45 times.
Yeah.
And that's when you have that volume, and it was windy and it was cold, and so the Bears just really leaned into the running game. And a lot of their bigger production was in the second half. They kind of just wore them down. They were running it well in the first half, but really kind of took off in the second half, which is something you don't normally see against that Philly defensive front. So that'll be interesting. Can Philly kind of bounce back? They play their next game now is Monday night against the Chargers. So that, we'll see. They've got like 10 days now from last Friday to next Monday to kind of get some things figured out. They're still pretty clearly in control of their division. The Cowboys are actually kind of closing that gap. They're game and a half behind now. So, if we're not careful, we could see the Eagles, they had that second half implosion 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's kind of looking a little bit dire there. Like there's greater things going on, but AJ Brown had a massive game. So, should help calm down some of his fantasy managers. Although if you've been starting them all year, you might already be eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then the Bears, it'll be interesting if they're able to. The Packers defense has been pretty good against the run. They kind of they really contained Detroit. So it'll be interesting if the Bears are able to run the ball with the same amount of success. Big NFC North showdown in Lambeau this week.
Yep, that'll be a huge game. So, okay, moving on here to the Rams falling on the road on the Panthers. Just, shows any given Sunday. I mean, Bryce Young looked pretty good, and the Rams did turn the ball over in some pretty suboptimal positions to turn it over. But your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Matthew Stafford, he had 30 touchdown passes, only 2 interceptions, no fumbles all season entering this game. And then he had 2 interceptions and a fumble in this game. So kind of outlier bad showing from them. Traveling cross country, it's in the rain. A lot can, I guess, explain it away. But the Panthers were able to play how they want to play, which is high rushing volume. Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle had 18 and 19 touches respectively. Clear backfield split there. And Bryce Young only threw 20 passes, but he was accurate on it, connected on a couple of deep plays as the Rams had to focus on the running game. So nice little play out, but I think the perception of the Panthers has to finally change. I mean, they were big home underdogs in this game, despite entering the game with a 6-6 record. They're a 500 team. Being as big of underdogs as they were at home is kind of rare. And now we've seen it, multiple times. They went into Lambeau and beat the Packers as 14-point underdogs. So at a certain point, maybe they're not the most glamorous team, but they get it done and they compete. And then from the Rams side, Tyler Higbee's on injured reserve. So Colby Parkinson, for those in need of a tight end, he's got a great matchup with the Cardinals this week. He is leading the team's tight ends in snaps and routes and targets, third in targets behind Devontae and Puka. So he'd be a nice little streamer for those looking to sneak in the playoffs this week in a pristine matchup. And otherwise, Blake Corum and Kyron Williams both ran the ball well. There was nothing really wrong with their offense. They were moving it pretty well. They still scored, 24 points?
28.
28. 31-28 they lost. Still scored 28 points. It's just, it should have been 35 or 38 if they hadn't kind of had those self-inflicted wounds. So I think they're going to bounce back in a big way this week against Arizona.
Yep, absolutely. Could see that. All right, moving on to the 49ers and Cleveland Browns. It was a cold, kind of ugly game, but the Niners, somewhat what we expected. And, outside of kind of wanting to see if anything was better this week with Shedeur Sanders, anything major to you in this one standing out?
I guess the biggest thing would be, so the 49ers have a bye coming up this week. But, the one thing that stood out when looking at them was Ricky Pearsall led the wide receivers in snaps and routes. Didn't have a whole lot of production to show for it, but he's a big play type guy who was featured in the offense early in the season. Clearly, he's out there enough, and the field conditions weren't great. It was a run-heavy game, but he's out there, and we know he's talented. So for those Week 15 matchups, if you've been holding on to him or waiting on him, I wouldn't be shocked sometime down the stretch here. He has a pretty nice game. They play the Titans at home coming out of the bye week. I think that would be a nice little bounce back spot, get him back going for that 49ers team. And then for the Browns, Dylan Sampson, the rookie running back who has kind of been the second fiddle to Quinshon Judkins. He went down in this game in the third quarter, didn't come back. Judkins, I know it was iffy weather, but we've basically seen him throughout the season. He's had a very big workload in competitive games or when they play with a lead. And he's kind of been game scripted out in some spots where they trail. And so I think that stood out to me. They lost this game 26-8. Were trailing for basically the whole second half. And Judkins still had a very big workload, finished with 23 rushes and 3 receptions. So 26 touches and a negative game script. Kind of, especially if Sampson is out, Judkins is pretty much a locked-in starter anytime Sampson is out, if he's going to have that kind of a game script proof role.
Yeah, absolutely. Good observation there, and something to keep in mind moving forward. All right, we look now at the Texans and Colts. C.J. Stroud was a popular play in DFS over the weekend and ended up throwing no touchdown passes. Indy loses. So Daniel Jones still a bit banged up. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, not a ton. Woody Marks, rookie running back for the Texans, he played the whole game. He left for a little bit with a little injury scare, but he came back, handled 20 touches. Nick Chubb handled 9 as the Texans won. Again, it wasn't a very productive day from the Texans running game, as has been kind of the trend, but at some point that usage is probably going to turn into some usable production. The usage and a young player, the Texans have gotten themselves that AFC South. It looked like the Colts might run away with it for a little while there. But now we've got the Texans at 7-5, both the Colts and Jaguars at 8-4. And the Colts and Jaguars have a showdown this week. So it should be a fun last month for the AFC South people. Jonathan Taylor had a solid game, especially considering the Texans defense, how good we know they are. So Taylor had an okay game. Tyler Warren and Alec Pierce each caught a touchdown, but definitely concerned that Colts offense started the season so hot, and I think they're just going to be more of a middling unit down the stretch here. Their quarterback's playing with a broken leg, so what can you do?
Yeah, you could say that again. Okay, so Saints Dolphins. I mean, as funny as it is, quite a bit of kind of nuggets on the Saints side. I mean, obviously, your thoughts on Tyler Shuck. Everyone was kind of excited about Devin Neal. So kind of break this one down.
Yeah, so Devin Neal, there wasn't. So Taysom Hill was kind of the worry for Devin Neal, with Alvin Kamara being out. Would Taysom take too much away? But he just had 1 rush and 1 reception. Wasn't really a factor. Devin Neal handled 82% of the team's running back snaps. He only scored like 9 fantasy points, but that kind of usage shouldn't be ignored. This week they play at Tampa, who isn't a good matchup for running backs, but I think Neal will be a very usable flex play. He'll probably catch a handful of passes, as they're unlikely, the Saints are, to be very successful running the ball. And with that in mind, Tyler Shuck, the rookie quarterback for the Saints, really ugly first half. I actually had a friend who uh, watches a lot of football, and we always are texting during the games, and he texted me. He's like, "Man, red zone keeps going back and forth between Tyler Shuck and Cam Ward, and I don't know who's worse."
Oh
And
God.
that was in the first half, but then in the second half, he made a bunch of nice throws, nice plays, kind of made that game competitive. So, I think he's going to be like a Jacoby Brissett light this week, facing this Tampa Bay team where he's probably going to have to throw the ball 40 times this coming week. And it may not always be pretty, but when there's that kind of volume there, the pass catchers, Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson, and then Devon Bailey, who had kind of a breakout game. He's been playing
Yeah.
a ton the last 3 weeks and finally posted a really nice game this week. They, of course, traded a 4th-round pick for him before the season. Right now they are 2-10 and would be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft if it were to take place today. They're definitely a team that's looking for the future, and they gave up draft compensation for this guy. So I think Bailey I don't think that's just a flash in the pan. I think they're going to keep getting him the rock. And so, I think for DFS purposes, the Saints with Olave, Bailey, and Juwan Johnson are pretty interesting to me this week against the Bucs in a potential high volume passing spot with low salaries across the board.
Well, you know that we certainly need the value, so that sounds pretty nice. Okay, let's see, Falcons and the Jets. Obviously, you were a fan of the Jets this past weekend with that lineup of yours finishing 7th. Again, it's kind of that time of year where you got to find some ugly stuff to work, whether you're in DFS or you're in season long and fighting for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think Adonai Mitchell is a guy who, again, similar to Vele, I don't think it's just a flash in the pan. That could very easily be his best game of the season that we just saw, but also it's not like he's just going to disappear. He's kind of he's their top wideout in terms of targets. He's a very talented player who, he joined a Colts wide receiver room that already had Pittman, Downs, and Alec Pierce, and he'd kind of get thrown out there and play rotational snaps. Sometimes when there's an injury, he'd play more of a full-time role. Inconsistency has kind of been the story of his career, but you see that sometimes with some of these players where they're able to perform at their max level when they are given that full-time role, where they're not constantly looking to the sideline or looking over their shoulder. There's just that internal psychological pressure of like, I have to, they're pressing almost like they're trying too hard, or sometimes just letting a guy play, and they don't really have anything behind him. So he's an interesting one that down the stretch I think we'll have some more really solid games. Breece Hall continues to dominate the backfield. John Mechie, I guess, is like a little bit below Adonai Mitchell, same sort of situation though. Former 2nd-round pick who's playing a full-time role. So he could be a consideration for like a flex piece. He actually dropped a pass that could have been a touchdown. Excuse me. Then the Falcons side, we don't know if we'll get Drake London back, but it basically was just Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. So that's, nothing else other than their offense continues to rely on the running game with Kirk Cousins calling the shots.
Yep, nothing new there. Tyler Algier vultured 1 touchdown, but Bijan still did fine. Okay, so next we got the Jaguars and the Titans. And man, the Titans, Cam Ward got a little bit of steam coming in and looked terrible. And then the Jags had the return of BTJ. And so, Jags are, I'll just let you go ahead and give your thoughts on this.
Yeah, the Jaguars got Brian Thomas Jr. back this week. Obviously, Jacoby Myers still had a nice game. Bretton Strange had a nice game. Parker Washington actually went out with an injury. So they play the Colts this week. That's not really, we talked about the Colts, but it's not really, from their fantasy purposes. But Sauce Gardner left that game with ankle injury. I don't think he came back. So that would be a big bump to the Jaguars' passing attack in that matchup for sure. So yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. He played. He got through the whole game. They might have taken a little easy on him because of the game script, but he's an interesting kind of bounce back type guy. We saw him come on down the stretch in 2024. Wouldn't be surprised if it happens again this year. And then yeah, the Titans. I mean, there was some excitement or hope they had done. I don't want to say well, but it was the best we'd seen their offense all year against Seattle the week before. So I think there was like maybe it's kind of starting to come together there. And they were just a train wreck against Jacksonville. But, this Jacksonville D, we've seen it two games in a row, or I guess 2 of the last 3 games, they completely shut down the Chargers before the Chargers bye week in week 11. They didn't shut down the Cardinals, but they slowed them down from what we had seen from Arizona in the weeks prior to that. And then this week, they completely just torpedoed the Titans offense. So that Jaguars defense, I think, needs to be noted the level they're playing at right now.
Yeah, it's kind of been like hard to really get a beat on if they're going to be a good or bad defense. They've been inconsistent, but yeah, definitely not necessarily a spot to target. Okay. Cardinals at Bucks, you had a lot of people returning. You had Marvin Harrison Jr. return, and then he had to leave, so could have something there. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. returned, 6 catches, 67 yards, solid game. I mean, a couple weeks out from an appendectomy. That's just playing in an NFL game. It's pretty impressive. But he was performing well. Then he had a heel injury though, and missed the rest of the game. So that'll be interesting. He could be out once again, and if he is, obviously that makes Michael Wilson and Trey McBride just that much better of plays. I don't need to go too deep on McBride. Obviously, he's great. And they play the Rams this week. It's going to be another high volume passing situation. Their running back room continues to be multiple players being involved. They may get Trey Benson back this week. Finally, I don't think they'll throw him into a feature role. You don't want to be starting him in fantasy either. But then, on the Tampa Bay side, Bucky Irving returned. He looked pretty spry. I mean, he looked fully healthy. Sometimes guys come back and it looks like they take a little bit to kind of get things rolling, get things right. But I mean, he looked terrific. He's got a matchup with the Saints this week. I think he could really go off in that one. And Chris Godwin looked the best he has looked all season. He missed the start of the year, returning from last year's broken leg. Came back for a couple weeks, didn't look good, and then I don't know if it was a re-injury or something different or a compensation, but he missed a bunch of time with a fibula injury. Usually they don't say like a specific bone, so that was interesting. But first couple weeks back was kind of didn't really do much, but a couple of big plays, which is good to see. It's not just like he's had a couple of games where he'd catch like 4 balls for 20 yards or something. Like it was just like it wasn't the Chris Godwin we're used to. I think with him and Emeka Egbuka kind of holding things down, this Bucks passing game could kind of take back off pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely love that. All right, let's see. Vikings Seahawks, funny story. There was an analytics person that I was listening to over the weekend, not at 1 week season, who said the Vikings were impressed with how quickly Max Brosmer was able to process, like how quick of a processor he was. And I don't think he processed quick enough on Sunday. Just like that was a Seahawks domination, and Brosmer just pretty rough first outing there. So I don't know how much there is to break down here from a usage standpoint, except that JSN just didn't really need to use him that much in this game. So he had like a pretty close to a nothing burger.
So yes, and I agree with most of what you're saying, but also like this is kind of why we do this, to kind of talk about context. Because I actually thought watching early in that game, and I messaged in our Discord to a user that we've talked about McCarthy throughout the season. I actually thought early in the game, Brosmer looked better than McCarthy had.
Yep.
The targets were more accurate. They were on time. He missed some throws or there was incompletions, but it was, some of these McCarthy misses are like Justin Jefferson breaks open on a 15-yard out route and he throws it 8 yards over his head.
Yes.
Or he throws it and it's a second late. But he had a couple of incompletions that they looked like an NFL completion, if that makes sense. And so I thought he looked a little bit better. And really where it fell apart was, they had a goal to go situation and he threw that. It was a terrible play, completely terrible judgment, but that flipped the whole game. All of a sudden they were down like 13-0. And then that environment, you're in Seattle against a great defense, the 12th man, the whole like aura of how loud it gets there and everything.
They can just dial up the pass rush.
And the Minnesota running game isn't great. So I think that he didn't look good. Obviously, there's not a lot of, I'm not going to sit here after a performance like that and be like, oh, like actually he's really, but the reality is that, he's playing within one certain situation. And I do think that this week, if they're at home against Washington, and I do think that, if he starts again, guys like Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson probably are going to have a little bit more success because it's an easier matchup, better environment, and less likely that he's going to get into that, that Seattle defense is no joke. So, I'm not shocked at the result by any means, but also I could see him, maybe him not having a great fantasy day, but making some of these other guys usable that really haven't been. But I don't know what's going to happen with McCarthy. They said it was a concussion. Who knows if he'll be back this next week? So not a lot to get into on the Seattle side. They didn't really have to do much. The Minnesota defense also is very good. So to that end,
they played good.
If Minnesota had scored on that when they threw the pick six, I believe it was 6-0 prior to that.
It was 3. It was 3-0. So that pick six made it 10-zip.
Yeah. So if they kick the field goal, it's 3-3. If they are able to punch one in, it's 7-3. It's a completely different ball game. But that's where, sometimes, and I had the Seattle defense in that roster that took 7.
Right, of course, you had to.
But yeah, it's sometimes like in DFS, people want to play the running back and the defense correlation. But like Kenneth Walker, he was real popular this week. That play for the Seattle defense completely like torpedoed his day. It cost them a possession and it changed the game script and they didn't really have to press offensively. So just, interesting dynamics there. Not really anything actionable, but, if you were hoping for a big day out of Kenneth Walker and didn't get it, it's a funny sport. Way the ball bounces sometimes.
Right. No, but I do like that observation. Maybe Brosmer, if he starts as opposed to McCarthy next week, maybe a Jefferson or an Addison. I don't think anyone's dropped Justin Jefferson because I don't know, he might be an undroppable player.
Nobody's dropped him, but there's definitely people who aren't starting him or who are after this game. He had 1 catch for -4 yards. He might have caught a second one later.
I forget. Let's see.
At one point, he was at like 0.6.
2 catches for 4 yards.
Okay, yeah. So, that's what it was. He had a 10-yard catch because he was 1 catch for -6, I think, at one point, or something like that. It wasn't pretty. And so people are probably ready to give up on him. Depending on what your other options are, he's still Justin Jefferson. I'd probably give him another shot.
All right, the Bills-Steelers, like you said, Steelers kind of have a way of kind of muting game environments. And, Rodgers got a little banged up, just kind of was not super crazy game.
Yeah, so Pulse in our Discord, one of our contributors does stuff with our props team, and he shared a stat this morning that the Steelers, since week 9, there's been only 6 completions that were more than 15 yards downfield. by the Steelers. 4 of them were completed to defenders. They were interceptions. So, they've only completed 2 passes to Steelers players more than 15 yards downfield in the last 5 weeks. Yeah, they're very conservative playing the underneath game. Their defense is playing a lot better than it was early in the season. So yeah, Pittsburgh games are just generally being very low scoring, not a lot of production. Although the Buffalo offense, they were missing both starting tackles this week, and they set a record as a team for the most rushing yards by an opponent in Heinz Field. The Steelers had never given up more in the history of their franchise, had never given up more rushing yards to a visiting team than they did on Sunday between Josh Allen, Ray Davis, and James Cook. So Cook had a big game and probably going to do the same this week against the Bengals. He's kind of on my short list early in the week.
Love that. Okay, the Raiders and the Chargers. Nothing too crazy in this one. Let's see. Vidal had a good game. Yeah, Raiders are just, they fought and put up at least somewhat relevant score there with Brock Bowers, but outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was their first game with their new offensive coordinator, Greg Olson. They had fired Chip Kelly early in the week. So as we usually see when there is a coaching change like that, Ashton Genty had 21 touches or 6 targets, 15 carries. That was over, he led the team in targets. Brock Bowers was actually only targeted 4 times, caught all 4 of them for 2 touchdowns, thankfully for me. But yeah, I mean, Genty, they're trying to get their star player or their best players involved, Genty, Bowers, and Trey Tucker. And I'm sure that will be the case again this week. And then on the Chargers side, Kamani Vidal had a very nice game running the ball. Justin Herbert spread things around how he does through the air. Keenan Allen caught a few balls. Gadsden kind of disappeared. And then McConkey and Johnston each scored. It's one of those things where, like, with all 4 of those guys, it seems like there's going to be one guy who posts a significant dud each week. Maybe 2. So, they have a tough matchup this week on Monday night against the Eagles as well. So, and they might be getting Omari and Hampton back at running back, but I don't think Kamani Vidal will disappear. That'll probably be an ugly timeshare. If Hampton comes back, I would have a hard time trusting either of him or Vidal, because I think Vidal they'll keep involved because he's played well enough, and Hampton coming back from the injury. And Hampton, obviously, if they're bringing him back, they're not going to have Vidal playing 70% of the snaps or whatever he did this week.
Yeah, exactly. Chargers just kind of spread the wealth, kind of set up there. Okay, Broncos, Commanders might see. Obviously, he wasn't back this week, but maybe Jaden Daniels will be back next week. And then the Broncos backfield, obviously some usage notes there.
Yeah, so RJ Harvey still was he scored 2 touchdowns, had a nice game. Both were red zone touchdowns. They had a week 12 bye. So since the J.K. Dobbins injury, first they just had the one game against the Chiefs, and Jaleel McLaughlin, he scored like a 4-yard rushing touchdown in that game, and I think that kind of spooked a lot of Harvey owners because it's like, is he not going to be the goal line back? But he ran 2 in from inside the 10-yard line, so I think those worries are kind of quelled now. He's not Christian McCaffrey. Like, he's not going to play 90% of the snaps, right? Tyler Bidet still is involved on some clear passing downs. Harvey only played half the snaps, but he had 17 touches to only 6 carries and a target for McLaughlin and 4 targets for Bidet. So in overtime there, so some extra play volume, but still, Harvey, he's got a pristine matchup against the Raiders this week. I think he's very startable. I guess the biggest usage note I would say for them was Troy Franklin's had a very good season, kind of a breakout season, but he was surpassed in snaps coming out of the bye week by rookie Pat Bryant. Bryant led the Broncos receivers with 7 targets. Cortland Sutton had a really nice game, made some big plays, but Bryant was second on the team in snaps and routes at the wide receiver position, led the wide receivers in targets. Coming out of the bye, it seems like that's not a coincidence. It's been noted throughout the year by a lot of the film people that Bryant is a very good run blocker, which Sean Payton places a lot of value in. And Bryant looked good. Like, he was moving well. He looked good out there. So he's a guy I would definitely be looking at picking up for the playoff push, especially in deeper leagues. And he's a guy too in DFS at only 3,400 on DraftKings this week that I have some interest in initially when I looked kind of scrolling down at who could be the next Bailey or Adonai Mitchell. He kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, that's relevant. That's relevant. Awesome. And then I know that Fantasy Fallout typically is a Monday post, so we don't get Monday Night Football. But real quickly, any thoughts on the game last night? I mean, again, I think the biggest news was obviously Jackson Dart coming back, Tracy getting hurt. I don't know how. I didn't quite. Someone said he shattered his leg.
Yeah, it sounds like pretty serious for Tracy. We'll see. I kind of saw the play, but I was like doing some stuff with the kids. Haven't like gone back to watch the replay, but from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound great. Both these teams have week 14 byes though. And it's a situation where the Patriots offense rolled. They spread things. They're another team that they really spread things around. They get like 4 or 5 wide receivers involved. They got a couple running backs. They got a couple tight ends. Hunter Henry, Stephon Diggs, and Travion Henderson are the main guys we're interested in. But, similar to like we talked about the Chargers, they're also, each of them has inherent risk at their position of, just
Steve
it not being their week.
Seems like he's mixing back in.
Yeah. So, with the bye week, Tracy's really the only notable thing that stood out for me. Obviously, Devin Singletary would be the guy to add there. Definitely should be picked up, especially if you're a playoff team. Some people may think, oh, well, the Giants are on bye this week, not worry about it. But if you've already got a playoff spot locked up, Singletary, would be a great pickup that maybe you can pick up for a low amount of fab, or if you're lower on the waiver wire, you might be able to sneak him in there. So forward-thinking owners, that should be on your mind.
Yeah, and again, waiver wires this time of year, you may have a little less competition than earlier in the year, so keep an eye on it. You might be able to pick up some gems. Guys, with that's going to wrap it up for the Fantasy Fallout. Mike, as always, appreciate your time. Guys, check out oneweekseason.com where you can get this type of content and much more, some deeper analysis. Like you said, Mike's already scanning the value plays for week 14. We're certainly going to need them. Mike, appreciate your time as always, man.
Likewise, we'll catch you next week.
Catch you next week, guys.
1 week season.